The Navajo Nation, located in the Four Corners region of the United States, is the largest Native American tribe in the country, with a population of over 400,000 people. For the past few years, I've been fascinated with the vibrant culture and the rich history of the Navajo. Now I want to learn more about the tribe firsthand, and we'll be traveling to Monument Valley at the heart of Diné to learn more about the complexity of 21st century Navajo life. From traditional practices to modern-day struggles, I hope to delve deep into the unique culture of the Navajo Nation and examine how it shapes its members. In order to better understand the current situation of the Navajo, a knowledge of their history is necessary. According to Navajo myth, life in the world as we know it started after a difficult journey through the underworld. First man and first woman progressed through different layers of reality, starting in the black world, then climbing into the blue world and the yellow world. After being carried by a flood caused by the ever-mischievous coyote, first man and first woman went from the yellow world and finally made it to the glittering world, our reality. The flood carried them to the four sacred mountains, the mountains that encompass and dictate the very soul of Navajo culture. The land, Diné, is the Navajo. Without the land, Navajo believe they are not truly alive. Their ancestral land is all that lays within the borders of the four sacred mountains. Because of this belief, problems often arose as the world developed and Europeans started to take over the continent. Encounters with Europeans began with the Spanish, as they started to colonize the American Southwest. However, the animals that came with the new Spanish colonizers, namely cattle, goats, horses, and sheep, transformed Navajo society and turned them into one of the most powerful forces in the western United States. The sheep, known as the chura, were especially impactful, as their meat was a key source of food and their wool was used to weave some of the finest and highest quality blankets and garments in the world. The Navajo loved their flocks and were constantly looking to expand and strengthen them. The Navajo saw raiding as the perfect way to grow their flocks. Frequent raids and the brutality shown by New Spain resulted in constant warfare in the Southwest. However, no matter how much fire or manpower the Spanish brought, the Navajo always had Diné to fall back on. The stretching sandstone landscape and all of its nooks and crannies provided the perfect escape for the Navajo. Their remarkable knowledge of the land allowed them to vanish into thin air when retreating and ambush enemies without warning when on the attack. Up until the mid-19th century, after hundreds of years of fighting, no enemy had ever reached Canyon de Chelly, the center and stronghold of the Navajo. After battling the Spanish, and after them the Mexicans, the Navajo were one of the predominant forces in the Southwest at the start of the 19th century. The sheer amount of sheep they had allowed them to survive and thrive. Led by such leaders as the Great Narbona, the Navajo thrived. After the Mexican-American War, however, a new foe arrived: the United States. After decades of rising tension and failed negotiations, the American government finally aimed an all-out assault on the Navajo. They sent thousands of men, led by Kit Carson, to destroy the Navajo. They burned all they could, fields, homes, and even people, and slaughtered anyone they got in their way. They rounded up as many Navajo as possible and sent them on the Long Walk, as it is painfully called, to a new reservation hundreds of miles away, known as Bosque Redondo. The plan to civilize the Navajo at the new reservation turned out to be a miscalculated nightmare. Plagued by disease, failing crops, and bad water, the internment at Bosque Redondo was one of the darkest periods in Navajo history. After years at the Bosque, the leaders of the Navajo, Manuelito and Barboncito, negotiated a deal to return to their homeland. Although they would only have a small fraction of the land within the Four Peaks, they would get to go home. Tears of joy painted the face of Navajo, and they marched back to the land that they called home. After the return, the Navajo tried to return to their old life, with many restarting their flocks of sheep and rebuilding their hogans. Life would be different though, as the U.S. placed new restrictions on the tribe. School was starting to become mandatory, and the Navajo struggled to keep children in school and tie down well-trained teachers. This led to much of the population being uneducated, in the Western sense of the term, simply because their lifestyle had no need for English or writing. As the 19th century ended, the Diné had regained their footing in a different world. They had their animals, but faced continual exploitation from the outside world and continual introduction of new and constrictive policies from the U.S. government. In the 1930s, things would become even worse. In an event known as the Second Long Walk, the US took much of the Navajo sheep away from the nation because of miscalculated statistics, which stated the Navajo had too many sheep, which were causing unnatural erosion. Shortly after the first long walk, the Navajo had only around 15,000 sheep and worked hard to grow their flocks to over 500,000 in the 1920s. The sacred nature and cultural importance of sheep forbid the Navajo from reducing their flocks, but the government forced them to. The main proponent of the sheep reduction, John Collier, arrested anyone that spoke out against his program and involuntarily took away hundreds of thousands of sheep. This caused tremendous devastation, culturally and economically, for the Diné. The livestock reduction caused the Diné to completely reject the ideas that the US tried to get them to adopt. Anything that came from the mouth of John Collier after the livestock reduction was not listened to, including educational reform. So education continued to lack until after World War II. However, World War II, unlike the decades and the century that preceded it, actually helped strengthen ties between the United States and Navajo Nation. The Navajo were willing and eager to participate in the war, as they would do whatever it took to defend their sacred mountains. The men known as the Code Talkers used the Navajo language as an uncrackable code, which was immensely helpful in relaying sensitive information during the war. After the war, although not lauded for their efforts by the United States government, the Code Talkers and the veterans were welcomed home to Diné as heroes, and after this, the nation started to develop. Education became more prominent, infrastructure improved, and the economy grew and diversified. 1950 saw $88 million given to the Navajo to help with roads, schools, and water. Over the next half century, the Diné continued to develop while also struggling with the problems of the 21st century. They faced increased alcoholism and troubling education rates. The number of people that still practiced the traditional religion, spoke the native language, and owned sheep, things that used to be the center of Diné life, started to decline at an alarming rate. That brings us to the 21st century. I wanted to find out more about the Navajo Nation in 2022, and I was fortunate enough to travel to Monument Valley and speak with two members of the tribe. What's your name?
Adeline.
My name is Dennis, and I grew up here in Monument Valley.
I wanted to focus in on a few main topics, those being the status of traditional religion and language, the biggest problems the Navajo currently face, and how technology and COVID is impacting Navajo life, and where the Navajo see themselves in the future. Navajo religion is centered around the myths I discussed beforehand, and Hosho. Hosho is the center of the Navajo. It is being at peace and in harmony with the world around you. The Navajo religion states that things such as death and violence disrupt the peace and stop people from achieving a state of Hosho. Rituals are used to restore their connection to the earth and the people around them, their Hosho. If you don't mind me asking, do you practice any religion?
Traditional. That's what I was brought up in, traditional, yes.
In 2022, how do you feel like the traditional practices and ceremonies and rituals, are they still like widely practiced, or?
Yes, they are. Some people still believe in it. A lot of us still believe in it, and I think that's just the way it should be too, and the way it should be taught. Even like basket making, rug weaving, and stuff like that. They have stories and they have like songs and prayers that go with it. So I think it's very important to know all the traditional stuff.
Rituals are created based on creation myths and the features of life which are most important. The four mountains, the seasons, the sun, the moon, and many other things. Today, not as many people are focused on cultural traditions as they used to be. 60% of the nation identify as Christian, and only 25% are said to still practice traditional Navajo religion. However, many Navajo blend the two together. It is said, though, that Christianity has been growing on the reservation ever since its creation, and the growing involvement of the U.S. government with Navajo affairs only increases Christianity's influence on the Navajo people.
For me, it's traditional. Lots of sand painting and singing songs, and a lot of people do still practice their own culture, their own religion. But there's a lot of Christianity out here too, also. A lot of different churches, lots of missionaries that come and trying to teach the people Christianity.
Do you feel like the youth is still continuing to practice the traditional stuff?
I think very little. Like I said, a lot of people are going into today's modern world where they're more into English.
Yeah.
So more of the people are into Christianity.
Do you speak the Navajo language?
Oh, yes.
Do a lot of people still speak it nowadays?
People still speak the language, yeah. It all depends on where the individual is coming from. Families that live in towns or city, they mostly just speak English. If you're raised on the reservation, then most likely you'll speak the language.
Do you feel the younger generations will continue to speak it in years to come?
It depends. They teach the language in school now, so it's really up to the individual. They want to learn. It's there, the language is there. But the younger generation, they're more educated now, so they prefer more speaking English.
A lot of our elderlies, they still speak Navajo, but some of them do speak English. But we like to teach our kids and our grandkids still to speak the Navajo language because to us it's very important and something that we should keep.
Do you think people will keep speaking it for generations and generations?
I would like to see that, yes.
Poverty is one of the biggest challenges the Navajo Nation face. Because of the abuse and trauma they have faced in the past from outside forces, Navajo are disproportionately affected by poverty. A staggering 36% of households within Navajo Nation are below the poverty line, almost triple the 12.7% national average. What I saw on the reservation was minimal economic opportunity and development due to lagging infrastructure. The Navajo have relied on a lot of tourism, and this was seriously affected by COVID-19, as businesses were forced to shut down and people stopped traveling to the reservation. Because of little economic opportunity, many Navajo have had to leave the reservation to find better life. Places such as Santa Fe and Flagstaff have received an influx of Navajo looking to become better educated and looking for better opportunities.
It was hard, but it was just me and my mom living together, and I was actually brought up by my dad's sister. She taught me a lot, and she didn't speak English, but she put me in school when I had schoolwork to do. She told me, you have to listen to your teacher. That's the only way you'll learn, because I don't know how to help you with those homework. So I always tried my best to learn at school.
Much of the Navajo economy relied on, as I stated before, sheep. Before becoming a reservation controlled by the United States, they thrived because they kept their economic internally and relied on other Navajo for important goods.
Childhood was rough. Everything out here is scattered, very little. Navajo way is mostly just chores and a lot of livestocks and stuff like that. Yeah.
What did you do for fun when you were a child?
Farming. Farming, we grew corn, squash, apricots. It's a hard work. Yeah. Water is something that's very in need here on the reservation.
Have you lived on the reservation your whole life?
Yes, this is home here, the reservation. Been living here all my life, yeah.
What does the land mean to you?
Man, the land means a lot to me. We live off the land here. we farm and we graze our livestock.
As technology has progressed, most of the things needed to survive in the 21st century are not produced on the reservation, and generating enough revenue to purchase modern technologies to help revamp the Navajo economy has proven to be a tough task. So the Navajo have been continually stuck in a vicious cycle.
The biggest problem that Navajos face is probably alcoholism, drugs. I think that's one of the biggest problems right now. And crime, lots of crime. People don't care anymore. Just the tribe needs to put their foot down and really enforce the law to stop all this big issue of crime and using drugs on the reservation, alcoholism.
Yeah.
That's one of our biggest issue now.
Alcoholism. Since the American invasion, over a century of pain, trauma, and suffering have faced the Navajo. Unfortunately, this has caused much of the tribe to turn to alcohol abuse. The rates of alcohol and substance abuse among Native Americans in general is substantially higher than any other ethnic group in the United States. 10% of Native Americans have an alcohol disorder, which is almost double the 5.4% American national average. Alcohol abuse leads to all sorts of problems on the reservation. Not only does it lead to health problems such as liver failure and heart disease, it causes economic stagnation and increased crime rates. Citizens who are constantly drinking cannot work, which lowers the GDP of the tribe and causes the families to plunge into poverty. Alcoholism is one of the biggest problems the Navajo face in the 21st century. We all know what COVID-19 is and its devastating impacts that it's had on our lives. For the Navajo, however, it has been even worse. On the reservation, when we visited it in December of 2022, there's still a mask mandate in pretty much all places. The Navajo Nation were the most impacted region in the United States based on per capita infection rates and per capita deaths. Factors that made the Diné the perfect place for COVID to spread included underlying illnesses, inadequate water, inadequate food, large families, and a lack of medicine in hospitals. This all meant that potentially treatable cases of COVID became fatal. The widespread nature of Diné Bikaya also made it hard for public health messages and medical assistance to arrive quickly to many Navajo.
I mostly work as guiding. So I take people and show our visitors Monument Valley.
How do you feel COVID has impacted your business?
A lot. We get people from all over the world, different countries. Yeah. And when that COVID hit, it did a lot to our livelihood.
Do you feel like in 2022 the Navajo are going in the right direction?
Somewhat. I think that a lot had to do with the virus again. So it changed a lot of people's lives. So it's hard to say. Yeah. Each individual have their own opinion. So yeah. I think it did impact a lot of people. Yeah.
Where do you see the tribe going in the next few decades?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. It depends on our leader again, our leaders that are directing the people. It's hard to say. It's hard to say where we're gonna go and how we're gonna be at that time.
Historically, the Navajo have been one of the most powerful Native American tribes to ever exist. They reached their peak in the early 19th century, becoming one of the predominant forces in the West. However, their clash with the United States, which started with the killing of thousands of Navajo, the exile of thousands more, and the destruction of homes, farms, and animals, has devastated the Diné. Since the Long Walk, Other legislation, such as the livestock reduction and minimal economic help, has left the Navajo struggling to keep up with the rapidly advancing world that surrounds them. Currently, the Navajo struggle with the effects of a weak economy, alcoholism, crime, and poverty. Because of the minimal opportunities available on the reservation, many Navajo either drink, turn to a life of crime, or simply leave the reservation. In order to stop this, development of the reservation is needed, and strong leaders need to pull the Navajo in the right direction. With the recent election of new President Bu Negren, the Navajo have hopefully found a leader who will be able to join the likes of Narbona, Barbancito, and Manuelito. Dr. Negren comes to the presidency with 3 degrees, a Bachelor of Science in Construction Management from ASU, a Master's in Business Administration from ASU, and a Doctor of Education in Organizational Change and Leadership from USC. Negren also worked as a project manager for a multi-billion-dollar construction company. Having been educated in the fields of business, construction, and education, and with experience in construction, Negren looks to be the perfect candidate to help revitalize the Navajo. The biggest issues the Navajo need to address are infrastructure and education. If they can increase the quality of their infrastructure and education, their economy will be able to rapidly expand. The quality of life on the reservation will then improve dramatically, and they will be able to capitalize on all the opportunities available on Diné Bikaya. How they will do this, I'm not too sure. They will need to generate revenue and could look to the federal government for help. In the future, it will be interesting to see where the Navajo go. Will they be able to revitalize their economy while simultaneously holding on to their traditional language and religion? I don't know. Hopefully, Negren will be able to lead the Navajo into a new chapter, one filled with positivity, a return to glory, and widespread household for all of Navajo Nation.